You're listening to A Climate Change. This is Matt Matern, your host. I've got a great guest on the program, James Fountain. James has got an amazing background. He's an expert in ESG compliance and decarbonization. He's previously held the position of Vice President of Sustainability and Strategy and ESG integration at BDO USA. He's a leader in renewable energy integration, an award-winning author of Our Changing World, which is a series, as well as a documentarian, created a documentary called The End of the Road. And one of the great facts I like about your resume, James, is that you have a master's in geography and a fellow at the Royal Geographical Society and the American Association of Geographers. I always liked maps as a kid, so great to have you. Oh,
Yeah, that's actually how I kick off my career, actually. And I'm also a fellow at the Explorers Club, which is a really fun organization. I would recommend anybody checking out if they're so inclined. But yeah, I was a cartographer when I started out. My bachelor's is actually in GIS, Geographic Information Systems, from the Ohio State University. And I thought, early in my youth, I came out to the West and just kind of fell in love with the mountains. I grew up in Ohio. I came out to the West and just fell in love with the mountains and thought that I wanted to spend my time mapping the mountains, and I started doing that for a long time. National Geographic and the EPA and the Forest Service, and then at some point I just kind of fell in love with the cultural side of geography. And that's when I decided to come back to Montana and leave the cartography behind, hit kind of the cultural side and the environmental and the social nexus of geography.
that's cool. So then where did that take you on your path? What was the next step?
I was making maps for the Forest Service in California, and I decided to go to grad school. The long way short, I saw a foods exhibit at a museum in California one time. As part of that exhibit, it outlined all the food costs and what the average weekly meal looks like for a family of four from different countries around the world. And of course, it showed the United States with all of our processed food and like our $5 million budget for per week for food. And you go to countries like then I came around to a country, Bhutan, and Bhutan's was like $7, and it was just super simple, but the people looked so happy, and it just kind of built this fascination in cultures for me. So that's where the cultural geography degree comes in. That led me to get my master's in cultural geography at Ohio State, and then, or excuse me, at the University of Montana, and then I did a work with the United Nations in the Democratic Republic of the Congo for a period of times. And that experience there, I mean, I went there for doing more GIS work, but I was also doing some humanitarian work there as well. So that experience really kind of opened up my world to what a cultural geographer in the field could be, and how important it is that we look at the impacts of climate change and biodiversity loss upon the indigenous communities and the remote communities around the world. Effectively, like a keystone species of our species, if you will. And because what happens to our climate, and the repercussions of what we're doing to our climate really impacts them first. And that experience in the Congo is what drove that home for me, and led me to pursue the rest of my work.
Well, tell us a little bit about cultural geography. It isn't a term that I hear out in the lexicon too often. So, give our listeners and me an overview of what that means.
In the cultural geography, it's similar to anthropology, but in that it is a study of a people and of a culture. But cultural geography takes more of a spatial bent to it. So, kind of the way I describe it, which is perhaps an oversimplification. We're going to get a lot of anthropologists who are going to get all over me for this, but really, rather than digging deep into the culture itself, I mean, we do that, but we also look at the surrounding environment as well, like the neighboring cultures, the environmental factors, the socio-political factors, ecological, economic factors, all these things that go in to make the culture what it is. And it really kind of looks at on a broader scale, looks at the why of a culture instead of the what or the how.
That's interesting. Yeah, did a little bit of study of political economy when I was an undergrad and always thought that was kind of fascinating. But when you describe cultural geography, it sounds a little bit like political economy because all those factors are kind of in the mix too.
They really are, I mean, and it really, again, as a sustainability professional and people, who are listening to your podcast understand sustainability. So they understand systems thinking very well. And that really it really is very much what a cultural geographer does you know, to, to their field work. They apply a systems approach to it and try to understand how all parts of the system, not just the ecological and the geopolitical, but also the business side of things too, because, we all are interconnected, in one way or another. So it's really taking a look at how all factors are impacting a culture.
Right. So tell us a little bit about your series, Our Changing World, and why you wrote it, and what was the impact of writing it for you and for your audience.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, so Our Changing World, it's a four-book series that covers a broad scope of sustainability. I mean, everything from and bringing in Indigenous voices, and promote people's voices into policy and decision making for sustainability, to environmental business, to social environmental rights, and to kind of where, and then I mean, I'm mixing all the books up together here, but then also where sustainability kind of started, where it is now, and where I think it's going to go.
Where do you see it going? What's your view of the future?
I don't know. I mean, where I see it now and where I see it from when I wrote the book is changing a little bit. Again, current policy shifts are making sustainability really challenging in the United States, and we have such a huge footprint on the global sustainability footprint. So I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see. I mean, I'm not a fan of a lot of the policy that is being laid out in the big beautiful bill, regarding the environment, at least. So it's my ambition and my aspiration that a lot of businesses will step up and say we're just simply going to do the right thing, not just for our business, because I think an environmental approach to business is viable and a profitable business approach, but also for the earth. So, if I can answer that question in 6 months, I have a better answer for you. But I mean, if it goes strictly by policy, I'm a little less optimistic, than I was, but still optimistic.
Well, I had another guest on the show recently, and he was saying that some cause for some optimism is how creative the environmental movement has been, and that there are millions of people working on these problems, and we're creative and we can move around this. And I kind of think that maybe the best approach with the current situation is kind of a Tai Chi approach, or jujitsu, kind of moving this crazy energy in one direction and saying, okay, well, we're going to find a way to solve this problem without you. You want to get in the way? We're just going to throw you to the side and go our own way, because we don't, we're not going to engage with that garbage.
No doubt about it. One of my favorite examples of that, perhaps comes from the Kingdom of Bhutan. The King of Bhutan has implemented a program. He's creating what's called the Gelefu Mindfulness City, and I won't go into all details of it. I mean, everyone who's listening to your show right now should Google it. If you just Google GMC, and Bhutan, that'll pull you up to it. The Gelefu Mindfulness. So essentially, he's creating an IFC, a National Financial Center, around the concept of gross national happiness. Which is how the Kingdom of Bhutan measures their wealth, and it's incredible. But, I guess off that tangent, the example that I mentioned for that, is hydropower. So we mentioned melting glaciers, but, Bhutan is a small landlocked country. Again, for your viewers who don't know its geography, it's a small landlocked country in the Himalaya, nestled between China to the north and India to the south. I mean, literally a third of our world's population are on its borders, and it's a kingdom of 700,000 people, but they've nestled hydropower, so which is a renewable resource, so they made hydropower and using hydropower to mine Bitcoin, as part of their currency, so it's a renewable energy source to mine Bitcoin. So it's like speaking about one of the innovative ways to use some of the current technologies to have a profitable, not just business in case, but revenue for the country. I think is pretty brilliant.
That is amazing. I was looking at going to Bhutan about a year or two ago, and unfortunately didn't, but I would love to make it out there. I love the idea of gross national happiness index. I was an economics major, and I feel like that is probably at root cause of the problems that we have here around the world is that we look at gross national product and we look at producing more and more and more as determining whether we're doing well. And quite frankly, if we could produce less and be just as happy, we'd be better off. If we're producing less plastics, that is a positive. Whereas in our current system, we measure drilling more oil, using more products, polluting more is considered a positive. We've got a higher GNP. Well, so what? We have more cancer and we have more pollution. Like, is that good outcome?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I think it's probably right of Keynesian economics, and the decoupling of a dollar from the environment. I mean, if you're trying to create an unlimited resource with a limited quantity. The math doesn't add up. If you think about the entire supply chain of what we're trying to build versus the available resources to build it in, it doesn't add up. And then I think Bhutan has seen that. But even broader than that, I think kind of, and maybe your comment is a microcosm for this entire conversation so far, in that the decoupling of money from the earth is an attempt at decoupling the interconnectedness of money from our livelihoods. You cannot do it. And I think Bhutan, and probably because Bhutan is a Buddhist kingdom and Buddhist culture, they view things from a paradigm of interconnectedness, and they see how things fit together. But when we decoupled those two, when we with maybe modern capitalism in this sense, I think that decoupling, is part well, I mean, it is. It's led to a lot of the policy changes. I think that's put us where we're at right now.
Well, tell us a little bit about your documentary, The End of the Road.
Yeah, thanks for saying that too. So the end of the road was filmed actually kind of by accident. I was in well, I was my first trip to Bhutan a couple years ago. I was there doing field work, for our changing world, and for an article I was writing. And while I was there, I just I'm running with this motorcycle around Bhutan, and I have my GoPro with me and my new iPhone 14. I'm thinking, this would be a way better story by video than it would be on paper. So I just started filming everything. And I came back and I just kind of handed everything to like this producer. It's like, here's data, make something out of this. So they kind of worked back and forth with some voiceover and put it together. But what End of the Road is about, it's about the impact of bringing a road to remote communities. I mean, it hits about that phenomenon throughout the world. But the case study for this is a village called Merak in the far east of Bhutan. Traditionally, it's a semi-nomadic community, yak herders, but they spend their summers up high in elevations and the winters down low, in the lower elevations, selling the wares and the money they make in the summertime. But the road to them has just been a dirt, muddy road, forever, up until a couple of years ago. But they were building a road to Merrick now, and explores both the positives and the benefits of building roads. Because some of the positives, of course, you can bring better access to medicine, and it's easier travel to sell their goods, and education and whatnot. But the negatives, it also makes it easier access for other things to get there too that might be damaging to the culture. I spoke with their village leader about that, and that was his biggest fear. I should go back there and talk to him to see how things have changed.
Yeah, I could see that it would bring in other influences, and it no longer has kind of the purity that it might have had before. This outside influences.
During my conversation with him, he mentioned that, even before the road was built all the way, 'cause when I was there, the road was they're literally building the road in front of me and behind me as I was going to this place. It was like on the part dirt and part concrete, or part pavement, excuse me. But even that time, this is in 2022, he said that their villagers were already starting to use, Western and American words, for things that had traditionally been used, in their language, which was like more of a Tibetan dialect.
Well, one of the things that you've worked on a lot is ESG, which has kind of become a dirty word in some circles more recently. Tell us about your work in that area and what has been effective, and maybe some of the challenges too.
Yeah, I know. My joke about ESG is like, at least here in the United States, ESG has gone from a three-letter acronym to a four-letter word, in a lot of circles. But yeah, ESG, so Yeah, I think it's an important thing, right? I mean, the rollout of ESG, I think, was challenging at the beginning and maybe not rolled out well, way it could have been. But, ESG really, in its sense, it's just an accounting mechanism to quantify the whole materiality of a thing, you know so again, going back to the decoupling of the economy from the environment, ESG kind of in my opinion, at least from a corporate side, ESG is an attempt to recouple that. It's taking a total look at the dual materiality of producing an item or of a service. So for instance, the common, definition of dual materiality is, what is the impact of of a part of the supply chain upon my organization, and what is the impact of this product I'm producing on the environment and the cultures and the people around us. It takes a look at the total cost of building something, and it reports on that, and then there's regulations around that to ensure that, our limited resources, don't go away forever, that they remain renewable, that they remain sustainable. So, yeah, so my work has been, at the government level. It has been in everything from, like, a small 10-person business to Fortune 100 companies, in the space.
So, yeah, I would imagine this is one of the reasons why polluters want to throw this ESG concept out because they don't want an accounting mechanism to show what the cost of pollution is. They don't want to, pay that cost and be held accountable for these bad decisions. So that again goes back to pure capitalism, of Adam Smith maybe made sense back in the 1700s, but because they essentially didn't have the means to pollute in the way that we can pollute. And there were essentially like unlimited resources, you know, in the 1700s, but we're no longer in the 1700s. So that theory just doesn't work because we have these externalities called pollution and things that cause cancer and just damage our environment. Well, we need to account for those things. And tell us what you did in order to bring accounting standards to these companies when you were working with them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and to elaborate upon your point, I mean, and an exponential amount, a number more of people too, on top of it all. So more people and all that kind of can add on too. But with these organizations, so one way of, I mean, kind of the high level way of implementing an ESG strategy is to go into an organization. You'll work with them. You'll identify what they are. What is a product that you make? What industry you're in, and then you follow guidance, and you go through a series of discussions and exploration and analyses of determining what is dual material for your organization. What are the things that have an impact, sorry, have either a social, an environmental, or a corporate governance impact, right? So it also takes a look at, how is your organization governed? Is it I mean, for a number of reasons. But so you go into an organization, you help them identify those items, and then you build strategies on how to improve those upon international standards. GRI is a big standard. People are using CSRD in Europe is another good one. There's other big ones that Europeans are using. So yeah, the idea again is just to identify that those things that are having an impact, build strategies on how to reduce them, report on them annually, have them audited by a third party, and then reporting your progress, publicly, on your website or other places, as years go on. But again, another challenge of that too, again, green finance space. We mentioned about funding these areas. One of the challenges is, a lot of investors, go on your pollution example, a lot of investors, they'll invest in an organization, and this is, I think, why a lot of investors have a hard time with ESG. The kind of usually the investment horizon, for something for an investor is like 3 to 5 years. I mean, they want to see an exponential return on their investment in that amount of time. There's been countless studies that have shown how profitable and a sustainable business plan is. But usually you don't get to see a return for, like, say, 5 to 7 years, which is outside of the investment horizon for a lot of investors, so that's another one of the challenges is just matching the time horizon with that of which investors are willing to shoulder.
Well, it's a decoupling of the concept of stewardship from the economy, from the political economy, and lots of the writers about democracy, like Locke and others, talked about stewardship, and that concept have kind of gotten lost in the conversation of how we're being good stewards of the environment, and pure capitalistic position would pollute unlimited. To be unlimited pollution because you're just trying to make as much money as fast as possible, which obviously is completely unsustainable. So, what are you working on now? What's the new big project?
Well, so I mentioned the Gullah Mindfulness City earlier, from the king, again, I encourage everyone to take a look at it. But I'm working on with a team right now to where we're going to be developing. We're in the talks of it right now, but I'm hoping to be working with a team right now to build the master plan for their sustainable development program. They're situated between two national parks is where the city is going to be, and it's about incorporating national parks into the livelihood of the city. So working with the king on that, and I'm also writing a large form piece on that'll be in a large publication coming soon. Hopefully by the time this is out, I'll be able to post and say where that's going to be.
That's fantastic. I have been thinking about this a little bit, as in terms of that our environmental problems are kind of a spiritual problem. They're a symptom of a spiritual malady, and that to the extent that our spiritual leaders aren't leading on this, or not talking about it, or is a failure, and maybe just everyday people of kind of connecting this, that it's our environmental problems are health problems, and they're also spiritual problems, and maybe they're even psychological problems, and the disassociation part, like people aren't as healthy when you're not going out there and connecting with nature. But that's another piece. But I think the spiritual part that you're talking about, creating in Bhutan, is beautiful. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, again, built into the constitution for the city, because it'll be its own administrative region. So the king's plan is for it to veer for 20 years and come back into the greater Bhutan ecosystem for 20 years too. But built into the constitution for this area is mindfulness practices and mindfulness spaces. So there is a designated amount of land. I think it's like, so Bhutan as a whole is, I think 65% in the constitution is 65% green space forever in perpetuity. I think for the mindfulness city, it might be 72%. I think they maybe even up that game a little. Don't quote me on those numbers. I have to look those up. But but they're also building in mindfulness corridors as well. So the mindfulness commutes, for instance, are going to be built into the infrastructure for the city. Yeah. Again, back to our other conversation, it's all interconnected. The spirituality, the health benefits, the economic benefits. It's all interconnected. And when you try to decouple one part of it, you're really damaging the whole. And again, that's what I think the sustainability discipline is trying to solve for all of us.
Well, it's just poor accounting when you don't account for these other pieces of the puzzle. If you're just saying money is the only measurement, you're leaving out variables that are important: health and peace of mind and psychology, and all of this um, are important pieces. And if you say essentially that they have no value in Western accounting systems, well, then of course you're not going to focus on them. But that is just dumb.
I think that's exactly right. Again, I mean, and money itself, I mean, it's a construct. I mean, you're placing environmental tangibles with a social construct, and you're putting more weight and more value on the social construct that doesn't have I mean, it does have a weight, it does have a bear because we choose to value it in a sense. We choose to value it more than the other items that you mentioned earlier. And again, you can't decouple it. It is not. It's not going anywhere. We're not going to all of a sudden say, okay, money sucks. Screw money. I'm just gonna go to the forest.
We all know that kind of it is part of the system, but we also at the core know that money doesn't equal health, and that somebody who's a billionaire would trade their $1 billion if they're sick and going to die, for good health.
Yeah, and maybe that billionaire or even you or me, or or not you, I mean, whoever it might be, who are embarking on these practices, maybe they have the mindset that, you know what, I get it, what I'm doing isn't great for the earth, but I'll probably be dead before I really see the impact of it. Maybe not. I mean, I think climate change is the rate of climate change is increasing, but also, that's really kind of a singularly way of looking at things rather than a special or planetary societal way of looking at things as well. What about your kids, your grandkids, or what about? I mean, I don't know. I feel like we should care for more than just what was proximal to our day to day. We have a duty to responsibility to care for it all.
Right. I think that, some of the current administration is so myopic in terms of just what is going to happen in the immediate next year or next quarter or next week, that they're willing to trade away the our environmental treasures for some immediate profit of drill, drill, drill. And that's, I like the indigenous concept, and I think it's in other cultures too, of just looking at least 7 generations out. And I think that's kind of a minimal concept. I think we should be looking probably further than 7 generations, but let's just start with 7 generations until we can, get to a more sophisticated level of thought.
Totally, and sorry to keep on harping on Bhutan, it's in front of my mind right now because 'cause I've been working on that so much. But I was speaking with the king, I was working on this project because I was there visiting him a few weeks ago, and he mentioned that, every part of the plan he wants to do, he wants to plan it out for 400 years, and the reason he did it for 400 years is because the people, the leaders who founded Bhutan had a 400-year plan, and some of the things that are in place in Bhutan and still working well for the country were developed 400 years ago. So his idea is 400 years from now, I want it still to be a good idea. And I think when you think like that, I mean, everything is good, everything changes, yeah, everything is better.
Right. Yeah. When you change the lens of your time horizon, a lot of different decisions look short sighted and not worth it. But when you're looking out 400 years, you're thinking in a different scale. And I had a guy on the program who's at NASA, and he was talking about astrobiology and tracking maybe if aliens ever came here, what would it be like? And his hypothesis was that if an advanced alien society would leave no trace, they would recycle everything. They would be completely sustainable. There would be no pollution because that would that's what it would take to travel great distances, and you wouldn't pollute your planet. Your society would die off. So that's the problem with our current model, is that we're essentially committing a form of suicide by destroying the environment.
100%, 100%. I mean, because 'cause the waste has to go somewhere and I mean, or you repurpose it or be able to regenerate it into some other fuel, but even the relationships part we were talking about earlier, how some of the isolationist policies we're having right now, we have to think about the reciprocal, and the, kind of the tangential, I guess you could say, detriments to that too. So as we're isolating ourselves and we're damaging relationships with other organizations, what policies will they have to put in place, to make up for, things that they would rely upon our partnerships for, the United States? And will they be environmentally friendly? Who knows? But anyway,
I was just going to say, these systems thinking, they are all interconnected. So how we're treating other human beings and throwing 10 million people who are immigrants out of the country is going to have a cost, and it'll have an economic cost. It'll have a societal cost. Uh, it it's and that cost is going to be gargantuan. And somehow I don't feel like that has been addressed by the people who are carrying out this policy. But James, it's been great having you on the show, and it's very thought provoking and great work that you're doing out there. Everybody should go check out Our Changing World, your 4-volume series, as well as The End of the Road, your documentary, and follow you on all your social channels and check out what you're doing. I really like the stuff you're doing in Bhutan. That sounds amazing. And maybe you could tell the audience where they can find all this stuff.
yeah. So the books are on Amazon, of course. Just check out Our Changing World. Actually, or on my website, jamesfountain.earth. James, yeah, James James-Fountain.earth. I think it's James-Fountain.earth. But definitely on Amazon you'll find the books, and the film is also there. The film is on my website.
Okay, great. Well, definitely everybody check that out. And I appreciate you being on the show, James, and sharing with us all the wonderful work that you're doing around the world and your commitment to this and to the environment and so much else. So we'll we'll keep in contact with you going forward, and please let us know how it's going.
Matt, thank you for the opportunity being on your show. Thank you for this, and thank you for what you're doing, by the way. This is an incredible podcast. I think you bring on really really forward-thinking people on your show, and it's doing good and it's changing things. So thank you, and keep doing it, please.
Well, we'll keep it up. To learn more about our work at A Climate Change and how you can help us reach our goal of planting 30,000 trees in the Amazon this year, visit aclimatechange.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. See you next time.